Hello, everyone. My name is Valerie Stimmick-Bailey from the travel blog Valerie in Belize. That is the blog dedicated to Alaska travel and travel in the American West. But if you're watching this video, you want to go to Alaska, and you don't just want to go to Alaska, you want to go to Nome, which I am so excited for anybody who's watching this because this is the first year that Nome has participated in this seminar series. And it is really exciting that Nome is sort of rising in the broad Alaska tourism ecosystem. So I'm so excited to talk to Shauntel in just a few minutes. But before we jump into the slides and all the information she's going to give us on how to visit Nome, a couple housekeeping notes. This is a pre-recorded seminar that I did at the end of 2024 to serve 2025 travelers. So if you are visiting in 2025, it's going to be really helpful and timely for you. If you are visiting in 26 or 27, that doesn't mean it won't be helpful, but it might mean that there's actually a newer video on my channel. So make sure you head over to my channel and just double check that there isn't a new one because I try and do these videos every year. The other thing is that as it's pre-recorded, I got questions in advance from my community. You can find links to all my community areas in the comment or the caption of the video, but there's no live Q&A. It'll look like there's live Q&A, but we actually have these questions in advance. So if you have a live Q&A as you're watching at home, just put it in the comments. And if I don't know the answer, which I probably don't actually because I have never been to Nome and hope to visit in 25, I will reach out to Shauntel and her team and make sure that somebody gets you the answer and the information that you need. Okay, that's enough out of me. I'm going to go quiet and I'm going to let Shauntel take over and tell us all about the incredible community of Nome.
Awesome. Thank you. I really appreciate that introduction. I'm going to add a few more details on there so you guys know a little bit about myself and my role in my community. So I landed up in Nome about 10 years ago, but we joke that I am a lot like the products or vehicles or other supplies that you see come up here. So once something comes up here, it's really hard to get it out again. And that was me. I planned to come up for a year and it's been about 10 now. Since I started up here, though, I've always been doing something with tourism, whether it was guides with the cruise ship, whether it was translating French at the port, or now in this new role, which just has been an incredible experience. So thank you so much again for the opportunity to share. I absolutely love Nome. It is a very cool, unique, diverse place. So a little bit more about myself. So I am not Native. However, I am married into a Native family and raising Native babies. Anytime that I am speaking from a Native perspective, please know that it is not my own. It is from my community, and I'm doing the best to represent in the way from an ally perspective. So I wanted to share parts of the land acknowledgement here. This is also cool because it explains and demonstrates how unique we are geographically, culturally, and linguistically. It's very neat to come to Nome and see all of the cultures melded together. So I won't read this out loud. I will stay on this slide and talk for a little bit longer to give everyone an opportunity to read it. But on the next slides, we are going to look at a map, and it's going to also kind of point out this amazing crossroads of culture that we have going on here in our community that really does make it one of the coolest places in Alaska to visit. Alaska itself is an obviously ginormous, hugely diverse state. So to have the opportunity to have three cultures kind of living in one place all together is a little bit unheard of. So I'm really excited to share that part about Nome. And then the website that I listed on here is katurivlik.org, and I do encourage everyone to check it out. That is through Kowarik, which is our tribal organization here in town. They run an enormous amount of programs from social services to research and science to GED programs for our community. So absolutely an amazing resource here in Nome to check out as well. So I wanted to start here with some images, but also to really drill home the Nome all year round thing. So the state of Alaska is, maybe unfortunately, depending on perspective, more or less known for being a seasonal travel state. So what I see a lot, and a lot of the questions that I get, are things going to be open if I choose to come after October or before April? And for Nome, the answer is yes. So, and this is why. One, we are the hub of Western Alaska. So again, I'm going to show you guys a map, and like we talked about earlier, we serve an entire area or region of 11 different villages. We're networked with Kotzebue, which is just north of us, but we're technically south of the Arctic Circle, and we are off the road system. So we rely very heavily on air traffic or airplanes and air transportation, and we rely really heavily on each other, which means that we are always here and we're always active and we're always open. And that also means that we always have something going on. So if you want to come visit, there's always something to do. So I kind of wanted to point out and demonstrate a few of those things in these pictures. So in the winter, of course, we have the Iditarod, which we're known for, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later on the slides. But mushing in general is still a huge cultural part of Nome. So we have a few local kennels. here in town. So if you were to visit in February, you could tour one of the local kennels. We have 3 women this year competing in T-Dog, which is an Iditarod qualifier race in Fairbanks. Pretty darn cool, something to look forward to, hopefully seeing if they want to follow up and run the Iditarod eventually down the road. That would be neat. So yeah, I just wanted to include that one in there to kind of encapsulate the culture of mushing as, again, we're off the road system, we're inaccessible. This is one of those ways that has historically been utilized to make sure that our community needs get served. And then I threw in an aurora shot here. So again, like Fairbanks and other parts of all over Alaska, but the more north and the more away from the light you go, the more vibrant you're going to see the aurora. Nome is one of those places that we get pretty regular activity from September through March. She really likes to put on a show the week of Iditarod. I think she knows that the tourists are here. And it's generally the last time we see her for the season. But I would say if you are brave enough to go out and leave your hotel, if you are here on a clear day, you will more than likely see the aurora. So it's one of those things that's pretty neat to kind of know what you have in your back pocket coming out here, because we don't have a lot of light pollution. And even though our roads don't go out very far during the winter, they do go out far enough for you're able to see the activity. And then I put in some historical things in here. So there's the gold dish or the gold pan on the bottom. That's in front of our Anvil City Square communal space. And there's a few other monuments and things that kind of demonstrate the diverse history of Nome as well. And then the train to nowhere. So Nome has a cool history. So obviously the indigenous people were here way before there were settlements, but we were settled in around 1900 with the gold rush. And then since then, we've had all sorts of economies pop up. So whether it's from fishing to, again, gold panning and gold dredging is still an incredibly popular thing, to mushing. We still very much represent all of those unique industries. And then I put the moose and the berries in here because, one, we do have the wildlife, and then we have the subsistence. So we live a pretty cool life up here. So in the summer months, we're able to kind of live off the earth, do our hunting, do our gathering, and provide for ourselves, because it's not always easy to get all of the food and products that we need being off the road system. Okay, so here's that map that I was talking about. It is a bit small, but Alaska's a bit big, so work with us here. So again, Nome is off the road system. What does that mean? So what that means is that you literally cannot drive here. My brain could not process this when I moved to Nome. I literally wanted to pack my car up and drive to Nome and could not understand why I could not do that in America. So what that looks like for us instead is that we fly most of our stuff in cargo, or we barge it up in the winter months when our sea ice is not locked up. But what that looks like for tourists is that we're not only rural, but we're incredibly rural. So it takes a lot of proactivity for planning ahead. But the neat part is that our community knows that, and we take care of each other in that way. We have a lot of platforms, whether it's on Facebook or Instagram or the newspaper, to help connect people with what they need if they are without food or without gear or without a safety product. But one of those things that really makes us unique, but can be tricky at other times. So I think we talked about that here. So we do have the 2 accessible air flights twice a day, weather permitting. So like today, for example, we had ice. So the flight got delayed. It was mid-air and got sent back to Anchorage, which is frustrating and expensive. And then by cruise. So this is becoming more and more popular in Nome. And I like this because although we do have lodging options, it's incredibly limited. And a lot of our lodging tends to book up ahead of time with people doing capital projects to help build Nome. So it's one of those things that you have to be incredibly proactive about, and makes those last minute weekend getaway trips to Nome a little more tricky, but not completely off the table. Just something to keep in mind. Whereas the cruise ships, they are going to port, they're docking, people are coming into town, doing their shopping, eating, spending money here, and then going back to the boat and not having that impact on the hotel industry, which has been so far pretty, I think, successful for Nome. It's going to look good. So again, planning ahead if you have medical, dietary, or other unique personal needs. Medicine is probably the biggest one. If you need something, it's not always here. And it can get scary. So that's one of those things. Travel insurance I like to bring up here. I encourage everyone to travel with travel insurance, period. However, if you are coming to Nome and we are off the road system, I would strongly encourage you to look into medevac insurance. If you were to break a leg in Nome, you are looking at about a $20,000 airline ticket down to Anchorage to get medevaced out of here and safe. Oh, dietary. So this one is one that I do bring up to people too. Because we are subsistence space, we are very meat heavy. So if you are a person that does not consume meat products, make a stop in Anchorage, which is easy to do anyway. Stop by the Costco and go ahead and get a few things that will help you last here in Nome. Our alternative meat options are incredibly limited and incredibly expensive. So that's one of those that I try to point out to people. If you need something that's not eggs or bacon or rice, please bring it up yourself. All right, so just going kind of into some more basic info, and then a closer up map. So this is neat too. So along the same lines, food is expensive, but everything is expensive. And the reason why is because we're off the road system and the price of shipping or barging things up here can just be ridiculous. It's something to keep in mind when you are looking around at things too. So kind of like I joked earlier, if you're bringing a car up here and it costs you $5,000 just to get it here, you're not going to pay another $5,000 to ship it back out. So it normally stays up here. So does everything look pretty all the time? No. And then again, the cost of fixing things. So I'll use a personal example. We went to go build our cabin, and it was just for the lumber for just the floor, like the platform of the floor. And it was, I don't remember the exact amount, but $5,000, we'll say, for the lumber. It was about $5,000 just to ship it up here as well. So when you are forced to kind of pay these enormous prices on things, you prioritize things a little bit differently. So instead of outside of my house, I'm going to do the flooring on the inside of my house and, invest in the things in the places where I spend more of my time. So one of the things we hear a lot from people when they get up here is, why don't people take care of their things outside? Because it looks a little bit run down. Well, there's a couple of reasons for that. One is the cost. Two is we're on the coast. So it's the salt. We're getting beat up. We get coastal storms. It's just rough up here. And there's not a whole lot of anything blocking us from everything that's coming off of that ocean and kind of whipping its way through us. I think it gives it character. Personally, I love that Nome looks a little rugged or rustic, like comfortable, homey look that makes me feel like I can be comfortable here too. So yeah, being prepared to see that in different ways. And then food costs are high, but easy to manage. That's something like if you're living here, that again, the sustainability, planning your Anchorage trips, learning how to do bush shopping effectively. It's a really cool way of life. So if you are up here, just chatting with people about how they do that and what that looks like can be one of the best tours that you'll go on. And then pack understanding I just talked about that a little bit first. Okay. So the cell phone service question is something that we do get a lot. Most cell carriers are pretty good nowadays. I'm still hearing that there have been some hiccups with Verizon working only in some places. So that's one angle of it. The other angle of it is that Nome, one of the positives of COVID is that we are finally catching up with the internet situation. Before COVID, we were paying an arm and a leg for internet, and places like hotels and community spaces weren't offering free internet because it was such a costly service to have. That's changing. So now there's Wi-Fi available in various places so that even if your phone isn't working for video messages or text messages, you can go get, do all your downloadable stuff at different places around town and not have to worry about it as much as you had in the past. The airport can be tricky, so there is a cab that goes back and forth, and some of the lodging options do offer shuttles as well, but it's not an easy walk, and there can sometimes be wildlife and muskox and things on the walk. So it's something to kind of plan ahead for. So make sure you reach out to your lodging thing or get in touch with someone. There are a few places that have car rentals. We are in the process of updating and adding all of that to our website and reaching out to see who has things that maybe aren't already on there. So I'm hoping to increase that fleet and have more options. A car is highly recommended here. I tell people that, of course, the gold history is neat, but the true gold in Nome is getting out to the country. So getting out of the city and being able to go be into the tundra and go see the mountains and go see the wildlife and just be in the vastness that it is truly a unique experience that I have yet to experience anywhere else myself personally. Along those lines, educate yourself on some safety practices. Our out of town is very easily out of town. You literally drive about 4 miles up and you are in the country, which means that you are a guest on the land of the animals and you need to be prepared to encounter and keep yourself safe in any situations. So when it comes to packing, things I encourage people to bring, even if they need to borrow it, are bear spray. It's hard to rent up here. It's very expensive to buy one for a few days. I'm eventually hoping to get some people that will do like a share or a rent out process, but it's, again, a costly thing. Bear spray is one. A Garmin InReach or any sort of sat phone or any sort of device. If you can't do that, the least you need to do is, if you're going out into the country, is let whoever you're staying with know what your plan is. We unfortunately see a ton of search and rescues for people who are not from around these areas because it's so much more rugged than people are expecting. There are no trailheads. There's mile markers, but there's no like markers of where you are. There's no cell service outside of town, period, for any of us. And there's wildlife, you know, there's moose, there's foxes, there's all sorts of birds there. And I say the birds because they will mess with you too. And then the muskox, of course, who can be aggressive. And yeah, so just be mindful, be careful, and just do your best to kind of practice all of these safety practices, sorry to be redundant there, as you can while you're out exploring. We want you to explore, but we want you to do it in the most safe and sustainable way possible. I am trying to work on kind of getting more tour operators. I have seen a demand in hiking tours. Unfortunately, the liability is really expensive. So to be a business owner and do this is a costly endeavor. But if there are enough people that would make it worth it, I would love to see this be an industry at some point in the future where you'd have a guide, they would have the gear, you'd still have the ability to go access the beautiful spaces, but in a little bit more of a secure, safe way. Before we slide off of this slide, just wanted to point out the map. So again, I know this is kind of small, but this kind of shows. So Nome is right there in the middle where the three roads come together. So when I have people come to town, they generally do like one of three things. They're in on the morning flight and out on the night flight. And then they do a city tour with either someone they found online through our website, or they rent a car and they just drive around and do their own thing because they've done the research on Nome, etc. The other thing I see is people come up for 2 to 3 days and drive the roads. And they always ask me, which road do you recommend? It's neat because each one of these roads kind of does their own thing. So the road that goes to the left up towards Teller or west, if you're looking at the map, that road drives you through the mountains with a view of the ocean for almost the entire time. You cut through an incredibly beautiful valley. You pass the second highest peak, 3870, on the way over there, and then you land in one of our native villages of Teller. This drive is awesome, but Teller is a very, very rural village. So anything you bring there or need there, you need to bring with you. Including toilet paper. So anything that goes in needs to come out. It's best practice to let people know if you are going to go visit Teller. You can either let someone know through COERIC, the tribal organization, or through their local IRA. And then again, safety plan. So if you're going to make that drive all the way up there to check out the village, super cool. Please let somebody know what you're doing, what your plan is, and about how long it will take. Each of these roads are about 80 miles or so, give or take, but are rough, not paved. So it takes plan for a lot longer of driving time than you normally would on the road system. The road that goes up and north is what I call the fun road. It's very recreationally based. You're going to pass one of our local, a couple actually, dog mushing kennels on the way up. You're going to pass Salmon Lake, which we use for just floating around, kayaking, fishing during the summer. Pilgrim Hot Springs, which is run by COERIC, and it's very cool. So that's about 60 miles up, and it's geothermal hot springs. And then all the way up at the end of the road, it spits you off in literally the middle of nowhere. And it's one of the coolest things that I've ever experienced. So I always encourage, and it goes through the mountains. It's just incredibly beautiful and gorgeous. So I always encourage people, if they want, you know, a little bit more like excursions or to get out of the car a little bit more, this is the road for you. And then for our nature enthusiasts and our historians, you want to go east. So out there, we pop over the Cape. From the Cape, there's very often you'll see whale sightings. We get beluga up here a lot. You'll maybe see walrus if the ice is breaking up. You'll see seal. The views over there are phenomenal. And then once you come down and over, you pass Safety Roadhouse, which is open during the summers. And then, yes, it's a bar at mile 20. I think that in itself should bring people to Nome. And then after that, Safety Roadhouse is right next to Safety Sound, which is an incredible place. And I know I'm going to butcher this. I'm not a scientist or a naturalist, but one of the places where the bird migrations come through, and it is literally like a National Geographic episode for the entire month of May and June. I have seen beavers over there. I have seen so many different types of birds. I have seen growth of wildlife. It's phenomenal. So it's just definitely worth checking out if you're going that way. And then if you keep going, the train to nowhere is along that stop if you're into the history of the gold rush. And then if you keep going, you land in another seasonal village of Council, and you will actually see some trees. So I always joke with people, yes, so we do have a little bit of interior up here if you are willing to make the drive. So yeah, I wanted to chat a little bit about what's going on for 2025 because we do have a couple of big things happening. So this year is a 100-year anniversary of the serum run. I'm sure a lot of you guys are familiar with Balto. There were other dogs involved as well. So what's happening is that the Nome Kennel Club is spearheading about a week-long series of events. And so you have the museum doing different things and having speakers come in. The visitor center is going to host a potluck at the local VFW and hopefully have some local foods and different things for the guests to try. I'm excited about this week because Iditarod generally sells out a year, if not 2 years ahead of time. People are very intentional about their Iditarod plans. This serum run anniversary, to me, it encapsulates a lot of the Iditarod ideas and the histories and everything, but at a different time. So to give people the opportunity to kind of do both is very cool to me. And yeah, so just various organizations doing a bunch of things all week long. I'm excited to see the impact that it has on our winter numbers. And again, just demonstrating that we are open all year round. And then in February, Nome is one of the 3 stops for the Iron Dog Race, which is a huge event in Alaska. Most people are pretty familiar with this. These guys are racing all over the state. They stop here. We do a few events for them in town, and it's definitely something to look forward to. And then in March, another local snow machine race. So this time they're kind of going within the region instead of all over the state, excuse me, is I think the second weekend. And so then Iditarod, which begins the first Saturday in Anchorage, usually lands in Nome between 10 to 14 days later, depending on conditions. And we watch the ending for the entire week, which is super rad. So of course we're all up and watching the first guy come in, but the last one is just as important and just as fun to watch as well. So it's called the Red Lantern. And then we have a huge banquet event at the end. So Iditarod, of course, if you can swing it and make it happen, it's important and fairly talked about for a reason. All right, so I didn't put April on here, but I should include, so April is usually when spring breakup comes up. Not a ton to do, but the days are longer. So if you are interested in more of the outdoor sports, but from a winter perspective, April would be the time to do it. You probably won't be seeing the aurora, but again, very longer days. So snowshoeing, ice picking, like any of those kind of activities, snow machining, would be best suited, I think, for April. May is when things really start to pick up. So we get our first influx of the birders coming in around the 15th or so. And then they generally are here through June 15th, about a full month. And there's a few people that are doing tours for birders in town, but this is another area where there is demand. So I'm hoping that we can eventually have more tour operator options and see that growth. I love that there's an interest in it. And again, we're in such a unique place that people are coming to see birds that they won't be able to see anywhere else in their life, which is neat. And then the commencement of our summer season. So June is really fun. We celebrate our midnight sun on the 21st, but we do events and things for the entire week. So last year was the first year that the Wester Dam had come into town, and then they immediately rebooked with us for 2025, which was awesome. And it was one of the best days for Nome. We had local kids outside selling food for fundraising for sports. We had all sorts of cultural activities going on. We had the tours that Robin was doing through her company, Nome Discovery Tours. It was just a phenomenal day. And the feedback that I heard back from the guests were that they felt really welcomed, that's what I want from Nome. So we're going to do that again this midnight sun. And then we don't see any more cruise ships until August or September. I think we have one in July right now. That might change, but our summer season's a little bit later in the season. But that doesn't mean there isn't anything to do during June. So June, again, the breakup, the budding of the green coming out, a little bit of the subsistence activities. And then as we get into July, the fish do start running. And then July, it's like prime season. July, in the middle, you get some of the salmon berries, or aukpik as they're locally known, or cloudberries, which I think there is a difference, but I don't know specifically or scientifically what that difference is. We get blueberries, cranberries, blackberries, or crowberries, and there's a few other ones. Those are the ones I pick. And that usually ranges between July 15th through September for the cranberries. So if berry picking is one of your strong suits or something that's interesting to you, there's a very wide window for that depending on what you're looking for. What I tell people is just to be mindful about where you're picking. So communicate either with the local tribes or land management groups to make sure you're not on any land that you shouldn't be on. But otherwise, there's an abundance, and work with someone and make sure someone knows where you are and that you are aware of your surroundings at all times. And then fishing, same idea. So like getting a fishing permit, working with Fish and Game, answering their questions, all of that is pretty accessible up here if that is something that interests you. Yeah, so fall tourism, this is my favorite time of year personally, up until about now. So again, September, October, we do, even in Nome, we see the decline in people coming, and this is something I want to change. Whether it's people who are in the state of Alaska already and haven't been to Nome, come up and visit. It slows down, it's a little more affordable, there's going to be a little bit more space availability, all sorts of things. But also like the things that we were talking about, like you get a little bit of everything. So in September, October, the aurora starts to come out. The colors are absolutely phenomenal. So if you wanted to do your hiking, and we're still open, so go to the museums, check out the muskox, go to the library, do the community activities. And then even into these months, so November and December, Nome shows up community-wise. We stay busy with craft fairs and bazaars. They have all sorts of fundraisers. They had an open mic night last weekend, or 2 weekends ago, I think. They had a fireman's carnival this last weekend. There's going to be holiday parties. It's dark here right now, so I will say that. So we're at about 4 hours of light. And so one thing that the city really does, or the community really does, is make sure that we stay busy seeing each other, and you can feel it. And I would love if guests came and experienced that, if that's the vibe that you're looking for. I love engaging with locals when I personally travel. That's kind of what I strive for, is just like sinking in and becoming one. And so this would be the time of year that I would have personally chosen to come to Nome, and just doing the things and seeing all of the amazing handicrafts that are available. It just blows my mind. And then I did touch on this a little bit throughout the thing, but yeah, there is clearly a demand for all sorts of tour options, whether it's a walking tour, historical, or gold specific, or snow machines, or, hiking. And like I said, all the biking, or not biking, but just outdoor enthusiast thing. The next step in that is, and we're working on this, is communicating that with the community. So I've spoken with the schools and about kids getting out there, because I would love if kids did more tours. They have the best perspectives. They're going to be the ones to show you guys the real Nome experience. And then teaching them how to do this, how to get a business license, how to get registered, and do all that. And so it's a work in progress. It's on my radar, but absolutely. So tour operators is priority number one. I put in gear in here too, because I would love to help someone facilitate how to rent gear. So whether like it's the bear spray or a kayak or a bike even, we don't have anything like that right now in Nome that I'm aware of. I'm going to do my best to kind of continue to reach out and see what individuals have what and get them on our website. And then same with storage. So I heard a lot of demands last summer asking for people coming up to store their things. Can I leave my bike here while I do that? And that's not something that we have, or even bags. Can I leave my bag at your house while I go bike to Pilgrim and back? Not options that we have right now. So I'm hoping to kind of figure out how to make that happen and get our community involved to create another business, and obviously create another service so that guests feel like they have a little bit more of an encompassing experience.
Okay, amazing. I had to unmute myself. And I'm glad I muted myself. So I'm going to turn off the slide so we can start to talk and go through questions. But you all watching might have seen me occasionally taking notes, because as I said, I'm really excited to go to Nome. And it is so exciting in this entire series of videos to have a destination that is a little bit different in terms of the infrastructure and the development. So if you watch the Anchorage video, you watch Fairbanks, you watch Stewart, Homer, anyone on the road system and anyone on the ferry system, they got this tourism thing like locked in, and pretty much anything you need is there. Whereas Nome is like, you are stepping way outside the bounds of what the average visitor is doing. And that means you're going to have a little bit more adventure. It's not going to have every single amenity that every other community has, but that doesn't mean it's not a work in progress, which is really exciting to hear that we're kind of getting that, the gears running. And I'll just say, if I come up, I'll work with you to get at least one can of bear spray your office can have to lend to people or something. Because if you're telling me I need it, I'll just pay for it and bring it, and then everyone will have it if they need it. Yeah, I mean, I could do that to help. Anyway, so yeah, let's jump into questions. And as a reminder for viewers, if you have questions, put them in the comments. We'll make sure they get answered in the future. But I have lots of questions. Some things you kind of touched on, some things that you didn't touch on. So we'll get to all of them. Okay. First question, actually, I'm going to start with my question, and then we'll run to everyone else's. And this is something that I was curious about, because as I was researching, I said, I want to go to one of these communities at or near the Arctic Circle. And the two that often get juxtaposed are Nome and Kotzebue. So I'm curious if you can just give us a quick rundown of what the differences are between the two.
Yep. So the biggest difference is that Nome is technically under the Arctic Circle. So if you are seeking that above the Arctic Circle experience, Kotzebue is going to want to be your stop. We do have a connecting flight from, I forget what the flight order is. I can get that information to you, but I think you can go from Anchorage to Kotz to Nome. So you could include it, and people have done this in their Nome tours. And Kotzebue is awesome. They do have some tour guides that do four-wheeling tours. They have some people that will drive you around. So they have some established things going on up there too. And geographically, they're about the same as us. So I think their population is about the same size. They're on water, but their road system doesn't go out as far as ours does. So driving would be a better suited option if you wanted to do that in Nome. If you wanted to experience just kind of the off the grid town experience, Kotzebue would be a good fit for that too.
And then does Kotzebue have Gold Rush history like Nome does?
Not that I know of.
Okay, that's what
It doesn't mean
one difference that I found. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Because I was gonna say, yeah, not that I know of, but it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So
yeah,
that could be something that
Yeah. So just to give a little like statewide context, because obviously I'm an Alaska nerd, but what a lot of visitors might learn is if you go to Fairbanks. So Fairbanks was established as a community for gold after the Klondike gold field. So that's why you can sort of easily, in Alaska terms, travel from Dawson City in the Yukon, which is near the Klondike gold fields, to Fairbanks. But then what a lot of people don't realize is that Nome, there was gold found in Nome very shortly thereafter. And so that's why there were sled dog runs and trails established between Fairbanks and Nome, because they're relatively close in their latitude. So there's gold rush history in this band that runs across the Yukon and Alaska. Great to think about geography and geology if you're that kind of a nerd too. That's all these communities in a row, but they're not all connected in a very like easy to travel way. But Nome is on that same like line of the gold rush communities. Anyway, just nerding out. Sorry.
No, that's a lot of people like that because the Last Train to Nowhere, I think, was part of that network. So they have that map and everything there. So it's like this equipment is still here that represents that connection we had over 100 years ago, which is just really neat, you know?
And there's gold dredges outside town.
Oh,
and all
still.
That. Like, there's a lot of
and
gold
it's still
rushes
very
there.
active. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So, okay, that brings us perfectly teed it up for this question from David, which is, how to experience Gold Rush history in Nome? Are there tours, or is there an order of things you'd recommend people visit on their own if there isn't a tour?
Okay, so great question. So one of the best things you can do, because it's such an active industry still in Nome, is to go down to the port and kind of explore. It's walkable, so you'll see a bunch of dredges ranging in sizes from very small vessels to massive these creations. The creations in themselves are worth checking out. There are tours. I'm trying to think, that would be something that you would have to look on the website and see if that would be arranged, through them. There is also a place called the AK Gold Resort, and they do like packages for lodging. So people come up, they pay for the package, and during that week they do gold excursions. So this might be something that David might be interested in checking out, because it's very specifically like gold information, the opportunity to dredge and mine. It takes care of all the permitting processes, and you stay in the lodgings taken care of, and they feed you, I think, even, and it's all just like done. So that might be a thing to, look into as well. But the history is everywhere. So just walking around, you're going to see plaques, you're going to see old dredges. Again, we're working on a walking tour that will hopefully be online as well, that will have a lot more detailed information as well.
Awesome. Okay, that is cool. So, and by the way, you've referenced the website a few times. So if you are watching this video, that website is in the caption of the video. So you don't have to you could Google it, but it's also here too, because I wanted to make it easy for everyone to get anything they need. And then I'm going to kind of move into another question that you sort of answered. And I think this is also a question I've had is do you need a car? And then if you do need a car, or, if you don't need one, what can you do? But are there are cars available? How does one arrange them? Is there public transit? How do we get around?
Yep. No, again, great question. So need, maybe not. Everything is walkable. Nome itself is a pretty small space. However, highly recommended. So to get out of the city proper and go see the country, you would need to have a car or access to the one. And yes, there are places that rent. So again, on the website, reach out. They do book up in advance. So depending on the months that you're traveling, definitely plan ahead of time and get something kind of secured as far ahead as you can. Oh, public transportation is not necessarily a thing here. Again, we have one cab that will do back and forth to your hotel and the airport. But that's kind of the extent of that right now. Oh, that's what I was going to say. So another thing is that we are a very active community on Facebook. So there's Nome Post. If you are coming to Nome and you need something, Nome Post might be a place where you can, not for a car, but like for gear or things like that. If you don't want to buy, all of this winter gear for a one-time visit, you can bring and check out there. But that's where a lot of people have gone in the past to see if individuals are renting out cars.
Nice. And was it, I'm hopefully not confusing Nome with another community, but it was even the case leading into Thanksgiving, which was just a few weeks ago, that there were extra turkeys available at the fire department. Am I making that up?
It's very possible.
I feel like I saw a post.
Communities. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I feel like I saw a post from one community in Alaska, and maybe this is just general advice that you should follow them all on Facebook, even because it's just really a slice of life. Where there was a community, and they were like, it was a post right before Thanksgiving, and it said, "Hey, if you didn't get a turkey, we have some extra turkeys. So we don't want anyone to not have a turkey for Thanksgiving."
Oh my gosh, I love that.
Because I don't remember who it was. I'll probably just edit this out. But it was one community, and I was like, that is so very Alaskan. Like, it does not happen unless you're well off of the grid, even if you're on the road system. I can't remember who it was. I thought it was Nome because I was like, that makes perfect sense for Nome.
Oh,
if you didn't buy a turkey in advance, you're not going to have one.
Okay. I love it.
All right. So let's go to, you kind of got into this one. So I'd love to jump over to this question from James about packing, because, what gear do people need? It's obviously going to differ between winter and summer, but is there anything special that you're going to need when you visit Nome?
Yep. So again, I'm a big fan of the safety things. So packing the bear spray, the Garmin, or any sort of communication, it's going to be a priority in my opinion. Obviously, you guys can make your best judgments. And then, weather specific. So it can get chilly here. Our last Iditarod, the average was -10 to -20 without the wind. So, and this is what makes it hard, is winter gear can be expensive. And so making sure you have what you need is critical though. Necessary. So borrowing or reaching out to online communities in order to facilitate what you need might have to be a must. So in the winter, base layers, anything wool is almost absolutely mandatory, and then good boots and all of your extremities covered. So face masks, gloves, all that, those are going to be your biggest ones. Coats you can put over many layers as long as you have good base layers, is kind of how I see it, Other than packing, so for summer, again, any of the special need things. So if you guys have a medicine that you cannot get refilled or might need refilled, that is not going to be something that might happen easily up here. If you have food restrictions, pack some snacks. And then summer, it's not warm. So again, more layers, and summer can be wet. So layers, muck boots, extra tufts, any sort of rubber on your feet, and then any sort of gear and coverings on your head to kind of repel rain, and you'll be comfortable. But I think that would be about it for your packing wise.
Good advice. I'm actually going to throw one out there, and you can tell me if this is a silly idea. If you wear glasses or contacts, you should probably bring a backup. Because in the event, it wouldn't be something you could easily get replaced, and there's no Amazon Prime in Nome.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I was like, I tend to cut it close with my contacts when I travel. I should probably not do that when I go to Nome next year.
That's awesome.
Got it. Okay. Okay, so let's deal with one more question. And we kind of were talking about winter, so this seems like a great one to end on. Snow machine tours. You had a picture of a snow machine on one of the slides.
Yep.
Are there organized tours?
Not that I know of right now. I know there are some individuals who rent out their snow machines. This was a huge request that we got a lot during Iditarod last year. So something I would love to hopefully see more of this year. The safety roadhouse that I was talking about at mile 20, they open for Iditarod as the last checkpoint, but the only way to get out there because the road is closed is via snow machine. So a lot of people during Iditarod want to take a ride out there because what a cool, unique opportunity to see safety at a point that you don't normally get to be out there. And so, if I can figure out, I don't know how to facilitate making this happen, but if we can make the connection or make the community know that there's a need, I think we can get more people out there.
Cool. That's good to know. So if you are watching this and you have a desire for a certain type of tour, you should reach out to Shauntel and her team to just basically public vote, because if there's enough people expressing interest, that's how things will happen.
Yep, exactly. No, exactly. Cool. Our community just needs to know that this exists. And even when I was telling the kids, the feedback that I get is that most tours, what people have enjoyed from the tours is when we just talk about our lives, because it's so kind of off kilter, and so they want to know, how do you travel for sports when you don't have a road? Or how do you, they just want to talk to the kids. And so when I told them that, they were all like, really? I'm like, yes. So you could literally drive around, make money, and just talk about yourself. And people enjoy it because they're learning and they're somewhere new and they're engaging with somebody that cares. So it's a win-win for everyone, but we're making it happen.
Yeah, I'm excited to see where it develops. Oh, and I wanted to give one more tip on packing. I should have
Yes.
addressed this earlier. Um, if you are flying through Anchorage, which you more than likely will be doing, there are gear rental places in Anchorage. So you could also look into doing that, renting what you need in Anchorage, bringing it with you to Nome, and then returning it back to Anchorage when you go back to Anchorage. Because
Yes.
having done all this research myself, I can tell you, you're going through Anchorage. So you're going to go big city to small town to bring, if you can't, if there's something you don't want to buy and it's not something that's going to be available in Nome for you to rent, you can probably get it in Anchorage and just have to return it there. So,
I
okay.
love that. I did not realize that. And I'm actually going to share that with people as well, because yeah.
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 There are a couple different things. I can't remember. There's one like gear shop, like outdoor gear shop who can outfit people, because
Awesome.
we get a lot of questions in my community, which will tee me up to the next bit, about like people from Florida and Texas and these warm states who
Exactly.
don't need to buy this gear. And so there's places in Anchorage that are able to meet that need because they have a bigger community that can support it. But that brings me to the community stuff. So one more time, if you have any questions, put them in the comments below, and be sure to check the caption, because that is where you will find the link to visit Nome's website, their social media, so you can follow along on Facebook and get that slice of the truly Alaskan rural community life. You will find, well, no, you won't find any links for me because I haven't been yet. So you're going to rely on Visit Nome's website and links to my Facebook community and my Facebook page. That is a great place if you have other questions. If you don't want to put them here, which you should, because this is where you're actually going to get an answer for sure from, an official source. You can also go to my Facebook and ask questions there. That's a great resource as well. And I think that just about wraps it up. So I will say thank you again, Shauntel, for joining me and for sharing so much about Nome. And I'm really hoping I can see you next summer
No,
at
I
some
hope so
point.
too. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
You're very welcome.